name is Steve Vanderhoof, and I want to thank you for having me out here to meet with you guys and give you just a little background of who I am, where I came from, and how I got here. I started my finance career back in 1989. I actually got a job with a precious metals dealer called Moorgate Limited, and we brokered precious metal investments in foreign currencies, and that's really where my career in finance began. It's a good place if you were going to pursue a career in finance, because all value is measured against currencies and gold, and they are measured against each other, and all of monetary infrastructure works its way out from that core center. Did that for about 3 years, got my Series 22 license to work selling limited partnerships in venture capital, which is really new businesses looking for startup capital or current businesses seeking expansion capital. That helped with understanding trend analysis and how to compare product pipelines in the market and what's up and coming, and whether that would be a good investment to get into. Was it too late after the bell curve, so to speak? From there, I got my Series 7 license in 1997 as a stockbroker. I used to trade options for the wealthy, and I'd help the wealthy get wealthier, and that was a fun thing to do. And then in 2000, the dot-com bubble popped, and from there, I thought, what would be a vertical market, in a contracting economy? Because anytime in economics something goes down, it causes something else to go up, called inverse relationship. And so I started doing some research about debt management, knowing a little bit about human psychology. We increase our expenses relative to the income that we earn, and then when the economy contracts, our income drops, but the expenses stay here. And typically people will reach for credit to bridge that gap between their income and expenses. So in a contracting economy, probably a good thing to get involved in would be debt management, helping people get out of debt. And I think that's when I really found myself. It was helping, middle America unravel their financial train wreck, so to speak. It's actually quite tragic, and I'm not going to try not to get too dramatic on here tonight, but I started a company called the Credit Exchange in May of 2001, and what we do is we help the people that have overextended themselves in debt find the right debt relief program. So we sit in the middle of the consumer seeking debt relief and the agencies that provide those services, and we do all the pre-screening, run a budget analysis, get a list of all their creditors, their income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, and then determine what realistically can that person pay back, and then match them with the appropriate company that can best service their needs, because there's several options as it relates to debt management. That was in May of 2001. Since then, the Credit Exchange has become the largest debt management referral agency in the country. We've consolidated over $1 billion worth of consumer debt, have helped over 88,000 people find the right debt management solution, and have done about 350,000 consultations. The debt management client is, it's a misnomer. We kind of think of people that are overextended themselves in debt as probably not too bright, but that's so not the case. A lot of people get caught in the debt trap, and it's very subtle. It doesn't happen overnight, and so I'm moved to be here to speak with college people, because really that's where that's where it begins. And one thing I noticed when I pulled up here was how the banks have all their brands on your campus, and they also set up booths to issue out credit cards to people in college. And I'm kind of, I wouldn't say it's adversary, but it is a very subtle, dangerous thing to do. And so for me to be able to come here and talk with people in college, I'm very moved to do that, and I'm grateful that you guys have me out here. I wrote a book called Mastering Money Management, and I wrote that book because it seemed to me that a lot of the pieces as it relates to how to set up your game board financially is either not taught, overlooked, You know, and just from where I came from and talking to people on the telephone and finding out, how did you get here with $45,000 on credit cards? You have no savings to speak of. Tell me, how did that happen? And it's usually, you know, embroidered in some excuse, really. And what it is I just didn't know. I didn't know how to set up the game board properly from the get-go. And, you know, if you take in a situation where somebody's got about $45,000 on credit cards, making $800 a month in payments, there's really not much wrong with their income. It's really how they got there, and now that $800 is evaporating into steam every month because none of it's applying to the principal. And I would tell clients, I'd say, do you realize that that $800 a month, if you put that into a systematic accumulation plan that auto-purchased shares of mutual funds, and it compounded at a growth rate of, let's say, 10%, do you know what you'd have in that account in 10 years? Like, what? It would be about $700,000. And then you could collateralize that at a brokerage firm and borrow against that at prime +2, and you could basically be your own bank. Your interest rates would be about 5% instead of 22%. And they'd go, you can do that? And yeah, you could do that. So I found that this stuff really wasn't being taught. And so I wrote a book called Mastering Money Management, which is really written at an 8th grade literacy, you know, and very simple and straightforward, to the point on how to understand and interact with money. Now you see this Move My Net Worth, Join the Movement tagline up on the board here. That's another product that I created that takes what I outlined in the book and puts it into a virtual format that graphically displays all your finances, and it does quite a bit, which I'm going to go over with you guys. I got to be careful because I don't want to seem like I'm here to sell something, because I'm not. This is a product that you can subscribe to, but that's not really what I'm here to talk to you guys about tonight. So with that, I'm just going to take you through my slideshow, and then at the end we can go ahead and open up with Q&A. And it's no mystery right now that we are sitting right in the middle of what experts are calling the perfect storm. We have a housing market collapse. The stock market crashed off of its highs. The dollar continues to weaken. We're at a 26-year high unemployment rate. Seems that there's really no safe place to hide. We've all been negatively impacted by the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. Can we agree that the financial crisis was brought about by a massive wave of defaults on loans all at once? Does everybody remember reading that? So it would be safe to assume if we wouldn't have borrowed so much money, the problem wouldn't have existed. So why did we borrow so much money? And that's because most of us match our expenses to the amount of payments that we can afford. And why shouldn't we? If we can afford the payments, why shouldn't we get the things that we want? Now, credit wasn't always as accessible. There used to be real strict guidelines that banks had to follow when issuing credit to people. There were limits on the amount that they could charge. These were called usury laws. And there was a significant deregulation that occurred through the mid-90s, where the government lifted that regulation, allowed them to charge whatever they wanted, and since they could charge more for the money that they lent, they risk-reward that made credit available for everybody. And it's like we hit pay dirt as a country. I mean, our lifestyle skyrocketed. Our economy was expanding like crazy. It seemed like everybody was getting rich. Real estate also took off like a rocket. And this is where that big rush into real estate occurred, was, again, credit becoming so accessible, and they had these loans called stated loans. That's where you could just write down, this is what I earn, and there was no verification of whether you did or didn't. And so many people were borrowing money just because credit became so accessible.